knowledge, and somebody who can keep simple records, simple accounting. I'm sure the accountants here will tell you that those are needed for that purpose. So we said research and innovation is key for everybody here. And to all intents and purposes, Nigeria's agriculture is well supported by research. Is that we have not been adopting and we have not been disseminating properly and adopting the technologies and innovations that come out of our research. So today, for instance, Nigeria has the largest national agricultural research system in sub-Saharan Africa. We have 18 national agricultural research institutes, 3 universities of agriculture, and 1 more in pipeline. There are 47 faculties of agriculture. This was as 2016. 47 faculties of agriculture in state and federal universities, and 10 faculties of veterinary medicine. So with this, we understand that agriculture is well supported already by research and by innovation. So, but we also have supporting international institutions. Our IIT is best known to everybody here. ICRISAT has stations here in Africa, in Nigeria. IORI and IFPRI also have stations in Nigeria. So their research domain will cut across all the major food staples and livestock, and also, as well as commodity crops. And they are involved in genetic improvement of crop and livestock, crop protection and diseases management, soil and water and post-harvest management, mechanization and processing. So, which means that a lot of technologies and innovations have come out of these research domains, which have either not been totally utilized yet, properly utilized yet, or are waiting to be utilized. And for those to utilize them will be the agripreneur himself. So, if we look at, it's not as rosy and as easy as we say it is, because there are also barriers to this. If we look at the example of cassava, which you have everywhere, cassava is a very important war stable crop. It's important for our food, in fact, and nutrition security in Nigeria. I'm sure without cassava in Nigeria today, I'm not too sure whether we'll have proper peace in the country. So it's mainly grown and processed at subsistence level. Because every farmer can process cassava at his level, and he eats and he gets content, so he doesn't go backward. Opportunities for youths across the remaining 4 value chains there in this photograph. So for us as an institute, we provide that service for the system, and we after now.
Array of different applications, and depending on the content of what you are packing, that would determine the kind of films you will use. So we have our customers like Coca-Cola and Nestle who are using it as the sleeve for the PET bottles, which is just a little sleeve over there. We have all the biscuit companies that are using for packing their biscuits, noodles, and pasta, tape, sellotape is being used for that as well. There's something called the cigarette overwrap, which is the little transparent plastic you have around the carton of cigarettes for those that smoke. That is our product as well. And bread, most of the bread packaged is BOPP that is being used. Depending on the application you need, you might need to then laminate it with another type of film. So if you look at things like I'll start calling some local products like cheese balls. If you open it up, you will see that the inside has a aluminium layer. So that aluminium layer is evaporated onto the film after it's been produced, and that gives it the moisture. It reduces the moisture that is absorbed, so that whenever you open the package, what you get would be still very intact and crunchy and not soggy. So the major objective of packaging, and plastic packaging especially, is to keep the contents safe and clean and at the right parameter for you to consume it. What is happening in the last few years now is people are now beginning to complain that there's too much packaging, and people are looking at other alternatives for plastic packaging. And in fact, I think a few countries have banned single-use packaging, which is what is the nylon bag, which is PE. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to lump all the plastics together as one product, but there are several different applications, and for whatever application you're using, we're going to be talking of a different particular type of plastic product. Okay, this is a graph showing food wastage per year, the percentage of food wastage per year. The previous speaker already spoke about this problem, which is a major problem that we have, especially in Nigeria. I'm sure the figure in Nigeria, I don't know exactly what the details is, but I'm sure the figure is going to be more than 33%, which is worldwide. Probably up to 50% of the food that we produce and should be consumed is wasted due to various challenges, mainly infrastructure, getting the food items to the market on time, also processing. If we could process a lot more of these food items, we would not be losing so much. And finally, packaging. If they are well packaged, you would have an extension of the shelf life. And when you are looking at the agric sector, you cannot really look at the agric sector without looking at the manufacturing sector that is more or less it's more or less the next stage for most agric products. So you have to look at processing. If you go out of here and you buy a pack of granite from a lady that is hawking on the road, you probably pay 100 naira, 200 naira. If that same pack of granite has been processed and packaged nicely, you're going to be paying times 4, times 5 for it. So it's a major value addition. And when you are looking at technologies and innovation, we have to do more packaging. And the more packaging we do, the longer the shelf life of the products we are packing. Where the problem actually starts coming in is, how do you dispose of this packaging material, and how do you make sure it is not harmful to the environment and is reusable? Okay, so this is just a brief example. If you are talking of peppers and tomatoes, unpackaged you start having degradation in about 4 days. If it's well packaged, it can last up to 20 days. Same thing for the bananas. Unpackaged, bananas, plantain, 15 days you start having it degrading. When it's packaged, it can last over 1 month. So this is a huge difference between when you just go and buy the product from the market like we are mostly doing now, and having packaged products that are going to the consumer and lasting longer and reducing the amount of waste that is being generated. So, what is a circular economy? It's an economic system aimed at eliminating waste and encouraging the continued use of resources. So, the major principles are reuse, reduce, recycle. Reuse means whatever product you are using, and not just plastics this time, whatever product you are using, you want to keep using it for as long as possible to consume, to save resources. So, I remember when I was young, and we used to buy Coca-Cola in the bottles. And if you break a bottle of Coke, you will know there's going to be serious consequences, because that had been developed that you have to collect the bottles of Coke and return it to the manufacturer or to the dealer, and then you get another crate of Coke. So we need to extend that into lots of other areas, especially our plastic packaging. So if you're just driving on the road, on the major road down here, and all along the road, decorating the median is all kinds of rubbish that has been dumped by the consumers. They've consumed the content of the packaging, and now they just dumped it on the center of the road. And that is a huge challenge for this circular economy, because sorting that bundle of waste is virtually impossible. So it is now just going to be going straight to a land site somewhere, which is what the linear economy was. You use it and you destroy it, and that is the end. You don't see it again. But there's a new thinking now, which is people are saying, look, why do we have to keep using resources and forgetting about it? And if we can keep recycling and reusing and even reducing the products we are using, that would be better for the environment, and that would be better for the economy and for businesses. Because that means your input into the next production cycle is already reduced, the cost of your input, because you're already getting your raw material from the already produced raw plastics and bottles and so on. So I'm going to just go into a few examples of, this is in India, and what they do is they are mixing the bitumen, which they are using to pave the road, with plastics, mainly PET bottles that have been crushed and mixed with the bitumen. So if ever there was a solution that we need urgently in Nigeria, it is something like this. We don't have good roads, and we have lots of plastics littering the roads and the drainages and the waterways everywhere. But they've been able to do this, and this is being done by a subsidiary of the Tata Group, which is one of the biggest companies in India, and it's working very fine. In Ethiopia, they've been able to have a waste-to-energy plant, which was built by the Chinese company, and this belongs to the Ethiopian Electric Power. Started operations in 2018, and they consume about 1,500 tons of waste a day. And that waste is generated directly into power production, and it's distributed through the electricity grid. Again, another solution that Nigeria could definitely do with is waste to power. Well, the power supply, it's very erratic, and if we look at all the resources we are having locally that can be converted into power, and not just waste, maybe other renewables as well, that will be very, very good for us. Next, these are a lot of research going on into this for the future, and these are looking at ways to break down or speed the breakdown of the plastics that have been used. So, to make sure they're not polluting the environment, using either a catalytic technology or using biotechnology and using bacterials and enzymes to improve the breakdown of the plastic that we are using. There are a lot of research going into this, and a lot of the equipment developers now, if you go to Europe and the West mainly, they are beginning to reduce, trying to make it monolithic, so that when you are recycling this and start trying to develop solutions for how we are going to solve these problems. Already, a lot of the big multinationals in Nigeria, like Coca-Cola, Nestle, already have started giving their suppliers deadlines to start coming up with innovative solutions. So that is the direction the whole world is going, and the direction the industries are all going. So, just to recap, a functioning circular economy can help in recycling and in power generation. This is not limited to plastics alone. There are all kinds of agricultural waste that can be recycled, furnitures, industrial waste. But the idea really is to start thinking and having that mentality that whatever you generate as waste, that's not the end product. It is still going to be going for another level of processing. And so that means when we are disposing of waste, there needs to be sorting right from the primary user of the product. So in Europe now, everybody and every house sorts their waste. You cannot just give them a bag of waste, all your organic waste and plastic and bottles. You will be heavily fined. So now the primary responsibility is with the consumer. You have to sort out the bottles, you have to sort out the plastics, and that is the direction we need to go in Nigeria as well. So of course, the technologies and the innovation is one of them, but also enlightenment of the general public is very important. People do not have this idea that, oh, I should keep my waste and dispose of it properly. Everybody's just dropping the waste in the road from the moving cars, and that is going to be a major challenge that we will need, the support of the government and other NGOs, to publicize and enlighten. But if all these plastics and waste can be gathered together, they can actually kickstart another kind of economy, another kind of industry where people are actually actively earning money, sorting out waste and ensuring there's, items to be recycled and reused. So, in conclusion, the circular economy has an high economic potential for development using scarce resources, while also being very beneficial, for the environment. As the previous speaker mentioned, this also ties into the Millennium Development Goals by the UN. The policy needs to be underpinned by strong research and innovation, and there's need for cooperation between the private sector, the public sector, and especially the academia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Obasanjo. We now have a little discussion before we go for the tea break. So please, I don't know whether you have questions. You can just signify by raising your hands. We'll call you to ask your questions. Any questions? Thank you. One. Another person? Okay. Dean? Oh, you are some of the... Okay, the boss has a question. So we have 4 questions. 5. Okay, we're going to come to you. Okay, 6th question. So, but before we have the questions, over the time now, I know that our Vice Chancellor is a good note taker, and he makes rich comments. So, sir, I'd like to have your comments.
Thank you, moderator, and again, all protocols duly observed. Let me thank the 2 presenters for doing justice to the topics they have picked up. I was just telling Sheon here that you have generated too many questions. I hope you have so many answers for them. I told the right-hand man here, Celestine, that, well, I wonder how he wants to attract the youth to the farm. Because I think that's the major issue on ground. He will give us a gap. And that gap appears too wide for me. The older generations are gradually fading out. Even when they are still on, they cannot meet our demands. Now, when they fade out, the gap becomes wider, becomes a gulf. What exactly do we do? I think that's the agripreneurship we're talking about. How do we go into attracting or making farming so attractive that the youth will go into it effortlessly? I think there's need for incubation centers all over the place. And I'm expecting that the funding person here will help us a lot on how we can generate funds for these centers to empower the youth to move forward. I want to digress a bit that in the 70s, the Gowon era attracted nurses. They made nursing so attractive that almost every female wanted to go into nursing. One, they moved them from level 5 to level 7. they made so many schools of nursing available. Nursing became so attractive until date. In fact, it's becoming more attractive than anything. To the contrary, our government relegated technical colleges to zero. Equipment are not there. If you go to a technical college in this country, you rarely find lecturers, not talk of students. How do we go about this, particularly in the agri sector, to make it so attractive so that our youth would be attracted to agriculture? During the OFN era, quite a number of our youth in the university changed their courses, their programs to agri, because once you are running, you are in the agricultural program, you have bursary, you have scholarship. So everybody rushed into it, and bam, they stopped it. Those who did agri that time, perhaps my friend was one of them. So very few of them are able to continue. I think something needs to be done. A technological hub to encourage them, to empower them, to move them forward. You moved on this area. The gap to 2030 to me appears too short. But perhaps there's a magic that we want to go into. Thank you for mentioning generic improvement. Again, that's an area where I think we can encourage our youth to go into. If they do that, it's likely, if we empower them, they would improve this organic agriculture, which all over the world is coming to play. The organic agriculture will help us, but then we cannot do that in isolation, not in a vacuum. There must be a hub. There must be an incubation center to develop them such that they will be useful. Soil and water is non-negotiable. Israel, that when you go around our environment, you wonder, why do we have to drink water from plastic and then create more problems? I think we solved the problem and created many more problems than we need. I'm glad that India is doing that. What do we do in-house to encourage a recycling of this product, what we are producing, such that they don't come out? From waste to wealth, they said. And I think packaging, good. Cocoa was repackaged from raw cocoa to chocolate. Fine, we're eating chocolate. But the waste from it, what do we do? I think we need to also look into that. We also need to add some value addition in-house. While adding value to our cassava and banana, whatever we call it, or chips, the waste from the packaging, we need to do something. You talked about reuse. What do we use them for? I think something should be done. And recycling is a major aspect. I don't want to ask all the questions. I want to ask everything. But just one thing more is the sorting of waste. I think enforcement is a problem in this country. Enforcement. I don't know how you want to go about that. Because to tell people that when you have your waste, you must take bottle somewhere and plastic somewhere. If you ask them to keep right, they won't keep right, they will keep left. I wonder how we need to do this. Something must be done. Again, attitudinally. And the need for us to become conscientious about our environment. Thank you very much, Moderator. God bless you.
Let's put our hands together for the Vice Chancellor. Interestingly, sir, ladies and gentlemen, the question I was going to ask the first speaker will be an addition to your question for him. I have observed over the years that faculties of agriculture in Nigerian universities don't get students. People don't apply there. Eventually, those who applied and the intakes don't intend to go and practice agriculture. They want to do something else. The problem we have in this country, governance problem. in other places, under crimes, they incentivize. Now, if you were in military dictatorship, we could have enforced. But now that we are in democratic governance, then you create incentives. So how do we incentivize all this behavior? You incentivize values, change of behaviors to the populace. For example, I remember that in 1984, when during the Y thing, I remember that I have two major examples. That I remember that the thing became so serious that personally, two personal experiences, I wanted to throw out Concob from the car, and I was afraid. I didn't eventually say, well, let somebody comes to catch me, and then I remember that you know, in those days there were people who wrote WAEC 9 times. It was difficult to pass WAEC then. And then my uncle had registered some of his friends that I was to register, that I was to write WAEC for. And suddenly, you know, this law of 22 years came. I didn't write that thing till tomorrow. I said, if I add 22 years to my age then, I don't think it's something. You know, it became a matter of begging. So those were things that shaped and gave direction to behavior, individual behaviors in their closet now. So it's a major issue. How do we get students? Germany is the foremost economy in Europe after the devastation of the Second World War. And they have the greatest industries, among the best in the world. And it is because they have incentivized technical education, not degree education, technical education. That's what they have incentivized. And those, I mean, their training is such that you are trained for a specific trade. And I think they are more, I think maybe they even get better paid than those who go to university, those who have that training. And they get trained, they get paid even while they are being trained. I have not seen any incentives in any direction in this country. I'm looking for one. I have not seen one yet. So, you are a PhD guy, so you'll be able to, help us to shed light on this. So, all the other questions, one by one, let us just come up and. So, please, Dr. Mrs. Okay, Dean. Is your dean, so you must give respect. So, Professor Sewebo, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. My question will be very short. We look at the global scene. Climate change has come down.
Good morning. These talks that we've had are very, very good. The first one, there was a day I was going to, what do they call that? Shaki in Oyo State.
Shaki, not Shaki.
Shaki in Oyo State.
Shawarma.
Yeah, Shaki in Oyo State, sorry. Not Shaki that we eat. Shaki in Oyo State. So, as I passed there, I looked at the topography. I was looking at the land, the vast land, and you could see that the land will really yield a lot of agricultural produce. So I began to think, because I know coming from Lagos, we have a lot of young people who are not doing anything, who are actually laying about. And I said, if the government, I know there was a time they did something like that before. I said, if the government could maybe take a portion of the land, build houses, that's home for the people, build hospitals, build schools, then maybe now go to and also help to ease off the people who are just laying about, who are not doing anything, like the area boys and all those miscreants. Because I believe there's nobody that would see a decent accommodation and schools for his children, hospitals, well, a good home. Of course, they would go back, and by so doing, would have solved some problems, both in terms of those people that cause problems for others. and also would have had more food products produced. Then on the other one, when you packed, I was just telling the person sitting beside me that there's somebody that started cooking around my house. Started cooking food. Yes, Mama put. So maybe the food is so delicious that all the people around that neighborhood, they now come there to buy food, especially on Sunday mornings. So you come back to your house, you will see all your frontage littered with refuse. And all these are things that cannot degrade. All these plastic refuse that are all over the place. I believe that if we go the way India has gone, like the presenter said, made us to see, and also Ethiopia, that will really help us because we have quite a lot of them. And the problem now, too, is that our people are so difficult to change. You see somebody that drinks pure water, because I always use that as an example. It's like it's just built into the person. Immediately the person sips it, just drops it immediately beside that person, no matter where that person is. So we need a lot of orientation. We need to talk to our people so much and talk to them. I don't know how we are going to do that anyway, for them to be able to understand that we're actually killing ourselves because we have more plastics than we have fishes in the ocean. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Next person. Yes, let's put our hands together for her. Yes, next. Okay, Professor Ogumoyela. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. I listened with attention because these are very topical issues, and I want to appreciate the two presentations. I have questions for both of them. The first one, I was particularly happy to see the highlight of the cassava and yam issues. One of the things that really we should be unhappy about is the fact that even though, as the speaker mentioned, we are the largest producer of cassava in the world, we are not on the starch map. And the question I want to ask is, how can we get ourselves to a level where, as we were making progress in the First Republic, we can now begin to see how we can use our agricultural advantage to actually bring to reality the diversification of the economy that we have been shouting about for many years, but there has been no policy. For example, we talk about zones of agroclimatological advantage. You go to other countries, you find that there is a wheat belt, there is a corn belt, and they have ways of supporting research and supporting all these things. Why is it so difficult for us, even though we have talked about it and identified, why can we not actually make this a reality? Is it something that, if we have 18 research institutes, is it something that they can actually take the lead in, because it cannot be it cannot be solved politically? Two, and this is to Dr. Obasanjo, please. I thank you for highlighting what people are doing in other economies with respect to putting plastics into use. There's a story that I heard which really grieved me, and that was the one about plastic crates. Research has shown that when you continually use your raffia baskets to transport tomatoes and fruits and vegetables, you lose as much as about 60 to 70%. In fact, some even put it at about 98%, especially if you already have some that are rotten before they pack from the field. By the time the whole thing gets there, it's finished. Now, my question is, if we know that we can use plastic crates, we can actually bring in all these plastics which are low density and blend it. Why is it that the packaging industry cannot take the lead in actually saying, okay, we will harness some of these, add some high density polyethylene, and let us make some crates and begin to see that this will be cheaper and affordable for many of our farmers so that this can be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Okay, Mr. Edike. Give him the mic. Sorry, we just okay. I'll come to you now, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. My question goes to Dr. Obasanjo on the presentation concerning circular economy innovations. Yes, at the conclusion of your presentation, you made mention of strong research in order to promote circular economy with regards to plastic. Yes, this is very important because just like what happened in India and Europe, they promoted research in this aspect. Here in Bells University of Technology, especially in my department, we have been trying to see a way of incorporating plastic in bricks to produce bricks so that we can also reduce waste and then possibly see a way of curbing the housing deficit in time to come. But this process is very fund demanding. Funding is very, very crucial to it. Because the moment people realize that you are making use of plastic, it becomes expensive. They sell it to you. That apart. For you to now come out and say, okay, you want to recommend plastic for people to build, we really need to come out with results that should be able to demonstrate that actually these things can work in our own climate. But the funds are not there. What can we do to provide funding for this kind of research? Thank you.
Edike, can we put our hands together for him? So we have the bossa. Let the bossa have the mic so that he can talk about how we can monetize everything.
Thank you, sir. My question, first of all, Dr. Obasanjo, affordability. What are we doing to make sure that these things are affordable? Affordable so as to reduce poverty. Doctor, sir, well, it is no longer news that your institute has done so many things to the world and to Nigeria. But one important thing is that, especially in Agric, is that most of these your research outputs are not available to the farmers. Most of these innovations, I visit the website. I even went to some of these research institutes. I cannot get. I'm a farmer. I wanted to plant all these vegetables. I remember in the 80s, I went to this institute at Ideshin. I bought very good seeds at very cheap price, and it was very good. When I went back to farming, I was looking for it. I cannot get. Unfortunately, those ones we are now getting are the ones brought in by these foreigners, and at very exorbitant price. I remember buying a sachet of a seed of pepper for 13,000 naira with just 480. They counted though 480 seeds in there. How can we begin to have our local seedlings? Because again, the problem between the challenge of agriculture in this country is low yield. That is the challenge, and it is because of these poor seedlings. So, closely tied to that is also affordability. Because you say we want to eradicate hunger. Yes, Nigeria is producing rice now, but at a very exorbitant price. I remember when I first got to Ilari, we were buying a bag of rice for 3,000. A bag of rice now, even locally produced rice, is 19,000. Is that affordable? So please, how do we solve those challenges? Thank you.
Can we put our hands together for the bossa? When you are having your question, I say, this bossa is a real farmer to know the number of seeds, 480 seeds in the pack. You must be a real farmer indeed. I want to, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say to us that what we are having, that now this program, that we should be patient so that we can be thorough with it. Now, I realize that for individuals' program, when individuals have issues and programs and problems, rarely can you get the problem solved without having a lot of thinking process. Everybody thinks about their process, about their issues, and God putting His grace on your thoughts, you can eventually come up, maybe gradually or altogether suddenly. And I ask the question, who is thinking about Nigerian problems? Nobody. Nobody. Look at it. Is it the Federal Executive Council of how many hours once per week? Nobody is brainstorming about our issues. And that's why small issues just begin to look as if they are monsters. So in our little way here, we are trying to do a little brainstorming and think and then just synergize on issues. So people should just be free and be patient and let us do it as thoroughly as possible. So we are going to have all the presentations and the questions and answers packaged into a book form and be given to all the participants. So those who ask questions, please help us to summarize your questions in written form so that we can document it. We don't do typing and shorthand. It's very difficult for us to be able to quickly write the questions as you're asking them now. So, but since it's in your mind, you can quickly just help us put it in a short form. So, the next question, please, sir.
Okay. My question is for Dr. Celestin, sir. You mentioned that a lot of research, results from research, is not being used. And like the BOSA collaborated, a lot of research is not available to farmers. Do you think that maybe the focus of a lot of research institutes should shift a little bit? Maybe from the government or from whoever is not using it. Because if the people for whom the results are made are not using it, maybe it's a time for the research to now shift to focus on a different sector. Maybe people who have more need for it and probably will be able to use it.
Thank you. We'll give the speakers now opportunity to answer the questions. One last question for Dr. Obasanjo. I was in a seminar in 1994, and one of the presenters was telling us that as of 1994, Americans were eating the rice stock of 1988. They had not touched the one they harvested 89, 90, 91, 6 years back. So what are we doing about storage? Is there anything going on, any research, any advances, so that we can even have, is there anything about food security? I remember during the Afghanistan war, and when Russia just turned from communism, they were giving them food, corn. They were telling them, okay, we'll do this, we'll give you this amount of corn, and things like that. Is Nigeria doing anything along that line? So I think we'll allow Dr. Kobe to start, and then Dr. Obasanjo after him. Thank you, sirs.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a few questions, but I will try to answer them as much as I can, but in no particular order as the questions came. Now, quickly, the last question came from my colleague near me, Mr. Kaur, I suppose. That is, why is it that our research results are not properly utilized, whereas they are demanded? I think that's the question. Okay. But to say here that research in academia in Nigeria, as we know it today, the universities and research institutes. In fact, they are not supposed to be different. They're supposed to be one system. If you go to America, for instance, the USDA system is integrated with the university system, thoroughly integrated. And they're also integrated into the agricultural space, such that the farmers demand a solution to a problem. Now, I'll give you an example. A colleague of mine, my institute, went on a postdoc to an institute in Canada. And in that institute, in biotechnology, the farmers challenged the professor he was working with to provide a solution for the wheat they had to provide a particular grade of starch. Because the grade of wheat they were producing couldn't produce that grade of starch that was demanded. So there was then that demand for that. So the professor then demanded for one postgraduate student that could work on that. He demanded for postdocs that could work on that. And he had huge grants. The grants that could re-equip that could indeed re-equip the laboratories in this university for that project. But I don't know whatever happened about that project, but just one example. The example that the bossa gave, that he tried to buy seeds. He bought seeds many years ago, and the seeds did well, I suppose. But now he can't buy those same seeds today. He couldn't get those same, except, of course, when they were imported. That tells you a story. That is the, how would you say, the vacuum that's created in a system that used to work and the system that has degraded. That may be due to a degradation of funding, degradation of focus, as will happen with most of our institutions, public institutions. But that's unfortunate if that happened in that circumstance. But to tell you here that first is that we want to do research that is demanded. And at the level of research institutes, most of the research we do are demanded. They are demand-driven. But in the universities, that's not to degrade university research. The university system is you want to add to knowledge in whatever dimensions. Very basic research, applied research, and maybe research reviews as such. So, in all of it is that the entire academia is trying to provide solutions to problems. We need a basic research information to be able to provide an applied research information. And the senior lecturer will want to become a professor by conducting research to be able to publish, to be able to get to where it's going to. Now, if the purpose is to be able to get enough research papers to get promoted, that means you are not necessarily solving a problem, but you're just publishing for the sake of it. Is that the paradigm shift we'll be asking for is that we should refocus our research in an environment where we have very limited resources to solve problems that are real and alive and are there. That should be a problem we should solve. Now, whether our research gets to the public with the second issue, there is a disconnect between the laboratory and the field. And that connection is supposed to be connected by an extension system. The extension system in the case of agriculture in Nigeria today is also broken down because one is being too government dependent and not private sector run, or private sector will have a space in that. Now, the private sector can have a space in that, and that is why you talk about having your science and agriculture graduates today, not necessarily looking for jobs in the banks, but they can provide those solutions that are there. I'll give you a very small example. In the 1980s, we were developing and trying to promote herbicide use in farms. Then it wasn't well accepted. But today, I'm sure there's an average farmer in Nigeria uses herbicides today. And that has been brought to the farmer by a group of young secondary school, university graduates who had to provide that space, providing that solution to farmers. If you go to Benue State, for instance, you have many school start holders, university, ONDs and HNDs, and also BScs, who all they do is, the investment they have is they buy a knapsack sprayer. They're able to read from the institutions or the institutes the pamphlets on what herbicides to apply in a particular crop. They connect with the providers of those solutions, like agrochemical companies. They buy those and go to the farmers' fields to operate that. So that's just a business they do. So the business really is that you mustn't necessarily be at the production level. You are providing solution that is needed at the level of the farm directly. So that solution is provided. So to that extent is that the farmer would, the operator would not have been able to provide that service if the research had not been done at the background. So the research background to the field is what you then say, how do we get the technology down to the farmer? And I just give us an example of how young graduates and young agripreneurs or entrepreneurs, we say here, can play in that space. Now, you also find that the issue of seeds you're talking about, why you're not getting those seeds? Today, our agriculture is not productive, put it that way. That's why people are not in that space. Because it's not productive, you don't see why you should sweat your entire year trying to produce a bag of rice. You spend 20,000 naira to produce a bag of rice, and somebody wants to buy the bag of rice for 5,000 naira. Why are you spending 20,000 naira to produce? Because your inputs are also very expensive. Your technology is expensive. Your access to the farms, transportation to the farms is not easy. You buy your herbicides at very exorbitant prices. You manage you buy fertilizer at very expensive prices. Then how do you produce and you're competitive as somebody who is in a system, I say for instance in the US, where these inputs are already very cheap? The entire system is mechanized. The farmer doesn't engage his wife and children to subsidize the food that you eat, because the farmer will depend more on his equipment, his tractors, buy cheap herbicides. Fertilizers are cheap because the industry is big already. So they operate on economies of scale. So, and he also uses the seed that is 10 times, that will yield 10 times as high as your seed. So I'll give an example. In maize, for instance, the average yield of maize in Nigeria, it has gone up to about 2.5 metric tons from about 1 metric ton. On the average, a US farmer can produce maize at about 10 metric tons per hectare. So you are not the same thing, because he used the right seed. The farmer does not use his seed. He goes to buy seed from the seed company. The seed company is run by, the seed company is not what anybody runs, because you have to have the right skills, the education to be able to run seed company, to produce seeds. Well, here you provide seeds and provide any direction and you produce. So that's then even if you have to produce certified seeds, the market is so fluid that anybody plays in that market, and it's not regulated. So people can sell all kinds of fake seeds to you. That's the major problem we have in my institute today. Nigeria today has more of low-yielding oil palm in the field than high-yielding oil palm, because people come and say that these are from NIFO. And when they tell people that, we laugh, because they buy all kinds of seeds around the place. Let me give you an example. For our seeds at maturity of about 7 years, can do for you 18 to 25 metric tons of fresh fruit. Now, the unimproved material will give you 5 metric tons of fresh fruit. So, on the same land where you have put the same amount of energy, the same amount of resources, okay, one gets 5 metric tons, one gets 18 metric tons. 1 metric ton is about 32 or 40,000 naira. So, you see how much I've already lost. If you have just multiply, say, I'm assuming I just lost 10 metric tons. 10 times 32,000 naira, that is still 20,000 naira on the same unit of land. So you can't be productive. So which means that this is technology we say we want to deploy to the farm, because technology is available through research, it's already there. So it's for us to be discerning as consumers towards what technology do I consume. So that's why in that space. Now the other question here, which I want to say quickly add here, is somebody was talking about how to diversify the economy and how do we get our research to reality from the research institutes. And that's what example I just gave, that you have to have a virile extension system. You also have to have virile incubation systems where young graduates now, as somebody mentioned here, who are on the streets. They don't have to be university graduates. From secondary school level upwards, that's some level of education. And so you need that to be able to drive modern agriculture. If you don't have that education, you can't drive modern agriculture. It's not possible. So you have to have that technology from somewhere. Let's take an example. In Ota here, there is Dufil. Dufil produces Indomie. Indomie is I think the most important, I would say, is a brand name in Nigeria. And I think it's the most popular brand name in Nigeria today. I mean, the women, I'm sure the women will know that. Now, virtually every home that has a child that is less than 10 years has Indomie on table. Okay. Now, Indomie is produced from what? Pasta, which is from wheat. Okay? And you can indeed replace much of that by 50% from cassava. So, what level? So, if we produce, if for instance, Dufe was cassava driven, how much cassava will you produce to do that? So, which means that they have to have the suppliers at the various end producing or providing that solution or providing the inputs. It's driven by onion. So, what level of onion will be provided to produce your Indomie? It's driven by palm oil. Dufil is one of the highest consumers of palm oil in Nigeria. Now, the palm oil that's packaged back into power oil, which you use here, I mean, what informed that power oil? Because after frying the noodles, and it had a lot of oils, which was repackaged, and the women were coming to buy that to resell. All they needed to do was to deodorize it, take out onion odor out of it, and then repackage it. So now they are packaging, we're having palm oil, which is refined as power oil, and having palm oil to fry the noodles, which also get back refined and sold to the producers. So imagine the volume of what is consumed at that level if it was imported. And indeed, much of the palm oil they use is imported. So how much jobs are we taking out of the farm? For every 1,000 hectares of oil palm, you have close to about 250 full-time workers. So if the volume of palm oil they will consume comes from about 100,000 hectares of oil palm, you have taken out how many jobs out of the country? You are taking out not less than 25,000 jobs at every level, from the cleaner to the medical doctor to the engineer on the road. So, which means that this is a sector that we seem to neglect and think does not exist and is not attractive. It's not attractive because we have not been producing it competitively and as a business as such. So, I think we should take our mind towards that and see that just besides us here, there's an opportunity which is tapped into by outsiders into the country. Some of that wheat is coming all the way from Iowa. Iowa, you have to go into the water system before it gets to Nigeria. All they just do here is to grind the wheat. You grind the wheat, gets to flour, then comes here to be produced as such. So that is just one example that I will give as what opportunities arise out of that. Then how do we attract youth into agriculture? Everybody doesn't have to read agriculture we talk about. We have a population problem in Nigeria, which I'm sure we sometimes don't know. I think by 2050 or 2040, Nigeria will be the third largest population in the world, with small unit of land. So you have one of the highest densities, population densities after China, India, will come Nigeria, more than Brazil. So where would that come from? And agriculture is not only just going to produce the crop, but let's look at the value chain. Let's look at the poultry industry, for instance. Who are the biggest players in poultry today in Nigeria? CZ, foreign company. Olam, foreign owned. Chivita, HCCH is foreign owned. That's TGI, foreign owned. I mean, Zamjot was Zatek, now CZ now. So these are foreign. What would the poultry industry depend on? We go to the supermarkets. Do you have ShopRite in Otta here? Okay. You go to ShopRite to buy smoked chicken. Smoked chicken comes from, well, first you have to have the right breed of chicken. Because if it produces local chicken, that will might take forever to produce 1 kilogram of meat. But if you produce the right variety, which is what technology is about, which is what innovation is about, is that you then have... Okay, time for me. Okay, sorry. Okay. Quickly, I have 2 minutes to go. Okay, so if you use the right variety, then you can produce more efficiently and earn money from it. I think that's what we're trying to say here, that there's opportunity to earn money and opportunity to do the
patterns. So we buy the corrugated paper cartons from the markets and the landfill, and then we process it, and it comes out as a paper roll, which is then reused for making corrugated paper boxes, carton boxes. So what we found is, the biggest incentive for most Nigerians is their pocket or their bank account. So once there's money to be made, you will find people that are interested in going into that sector, no matter what the sector is, no matter how unglamorous or how unattractive it is. So one of the things we need to really do is to try and look at the economics of whatever research we are doing or whatever solutions we are proposing. So if you have to go to a company today and tell them, oh, you have to use recycled materials for your packaging, and it's going to cost them 50 to 60% more, they're not going to be interested. If you try and push it through legislation in Abuja, they will fly to Abuja and block it. Something similar happened to the cassava policy with flour for flour, mixing cassava with wheat flour to make bread. So my point is, when we are looking at the research and the incentive, we have to look at it from an economic angle and see what will work down the line. And we as a company, we are ready to partner with Research Institute and with the Bells University of Technology to start developing research that could help reduce the amount of packaging that is being used, that could help encourage people to do more recycling. Thank you. Like I said earlier, so most of the multinationals are already moving in this direction. So it's only a matter of time before Coca-Cola head office in Atlanta calls Coca-Cola in Nigeria and says, look, what are you doing about sustainability and and the environment? So if we position ourselves now and start positioning ourselves now, it's only a matter of time, and it is not something one person can do, to be honest. You need collaboration and a lot of input from the government. In Lagos, we've started discussing with Loma, who handles their trash, and in Ogun State, we're going to start discussing with the equivalent here as well. So we need to discuss with where they call the landfill sites. If you go to a lot of those landfill sites, there are actually people there already scavenging and collecting products. But they are collecting the products that have an economic benefit to them. So they're not going to collect anything that they cannot sell. So you see them, they started collecting the PET bottles now. They are collecting cans and glass bottles. So it is definitely possible to extend the net. There are so many, people that are working, that are living below the poverty line that you can deploy. We have so much resources that you can deploy to a lot of these sites to collect and to sort. Apart from educating and enlightening people that they should sort out their waste as soon as they finish using it, and they should dispose of their waste properly, not into the river or lagoon or waterways. In terms of funding for the research, I believe there would be opportunities to collaborate with several developmental institutions, especially in Europe, where they are moving ahead with this circular economy and renewables at full speed. And they are ready to assist in the development of local industries and local researchers. So I'm sure there are funds available from that from that group. Also, if there's any economically viable product that can be recycled and reused locally as well, there would most likely be a potential off-taker. It might need a little bit of business development and convincing that the product would be suitable for them, especially when it comes to food, the food industry. You don't want using recycled material that has been contaminated and that will not contaminate their process. So in that respect, one needs to look at maybe working with NAFDAC, working with Standard Organization of Nigeria, and other government agencies. But it is definitely possible to start developing these markets and these products. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but that is definitely the direction we have to look at and the direction we have to be going. I think you asked the question about the storage. I think, if I'm not wrong, we have silos all over Nigeria for strategic grain reserve, but I am very sure that there's nothing in those silos now. So, it's another kind of systemic problem that we have. So, if you look at this rice issue now, with the closure of the border, and I look at it even as a national security issue. Are you trying to say that if tomorrow Thailand wakes up and says, I'm not selling rice to Nigeria, and we have a government that goes foul of an international law or treaty, and there's an embargo on importation of rice, are you trying to say that we are not going to eat rice in Nigeria? So people are just going to start starving. So there are a lot of repercussions to not developing your own industries in the country, and especially in agric and in the food industry, because that means you are at the mercy of any government that is ready to give you rice or maize or wheat. But I think the problems are very large, and are quite complicated. But I believe the solutions should be driven from the private sector, and it should be looked at from an economically viable angle. So if you say, okay, you've closed the borders, for example, and rice is now gone from 10,000, local rice has gone from 10,000 to I think 19,000. Are we going to those farmers to ensure that the extra profit that they are making is being reinvested in the right way? Are we going to those farmers to make sure that, okay, the mills that they are using to mill the rice is being upgraded and is being developed to meet international standards? If we are not, then all these activities will be in vain, because eventually the borders are going to be opened one way or the other, and the market is going to be flooded again by imported rice which is cheaper. And the reason why it's much cheaper is because they have spent time developing their own infrastructure and their own systems, and they're able to sell and produce at less than your cost. So there's no shortcut about it. We are all in this together, and we need to start looking at innovative ideas. And finally, I want to talk about the dropping of waste, and I want to just challenge everybody here. If you see somebody dropping waste on the road, go and tell them that, look, do not do that. You see, the responsibility starts with all of us. And until we start enforcing all these issues in our own environment, in our own offices, in our homes, in our church, in our universities, we would never come out of this situation we are in, where everybody is just having living in a kind of lawless society. So I want to challenge everyone. If you see anybody dropping waste, go and tell them, look, you have to pick up this waste. Even if they don't pick it up, I'm betting that the next time they want to drop waste, they'll think twice about it. That the last time I dropped the paper there, somebody came to abuse me. I don't want anybody to abuse me today. I'll go and drop it somewhere else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, our guest speakers, for those insight and answers to the questions. But just permit me to say one or few things. When we have meetings of FAO and whatever, and the meeting will not hold in the remote villages where the farmers reside, the meetings are held in Abuja, how do we pass down the information? There should be a bottom to the top approach, because that is why some of things, that seems to be a lacuna, a gap in between. Like the rice seedling, like you already said, we close the border, but we need to engender seedlings. Give the farmers seedlings, improved seedlings before you close the border. So it's not just closing the border, because like you said, we might come back to the same table. And let me share this experience finally. At the time, I walked to the ADP in Ado-Ekiti, and I saw fertilizers being loaded back to the north. Under the Nigerian agricultural policy, fertilizers are shared. Either you need it or do not need it. But you find that these things are being loaded even back to the north. Maybe it is tractor we need here. They should give us tractor. But they just give everybody fertilizer, all in the name of agricultural policy. God will help our country. Now we need to go for the tea and snacks break. And that is at the right end of the hall. So as a matter of courtesy, please will allow the people on the special table to go first. And we'll follow suit with our deans and others. And we should not forget